Retro Future.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, this is Fitzgerald H. Bendel-Smith, and welcome back to our new series on history. My employer, Mr. Lexicon, is currently occupied with other projects. In our last video, we talked about a somewhat controversial topic, but no worries. Today we return to our original steampunk-based programming. For those new to this channel, this is a new concept we're trying out in which we explore the character stories set in the Association of Ishtar universe and the histories that inspired them. In these first few episodes, we focus on 3 steampunk archetypes, and in this episode, we'll discuss the Weird Engineer. For this example, we'll use a character from our upcoming comic book series, Journey to Elysium, by the name of Gulam Ali. Although our current Kickstarter focuses on the upcoming series, it funds the Association of Ishtar project as a whole. At the moment, all of our income goes to our talented illustrators who contribute to our series, including this very video. So please consider backing or at least sharing our project and help this project grow beyond the confines of this niche genre. And with those formalities aside, let's dive into today's focal point: the Weird Engineer archetype, personified by Gulam Ali. But before we get into this alternate history aspect of our story, we're gonna have a look at the actual history of his country of origin, located in present-day India. But back then it was a mighty sultanate, that of Mysore, ruled by a dynasty of generals. Gulam Ali was born in 1775 in the kingdom of Mysore in southern India during the reign of his uncle, Sultan Hyder Ali. Hyder was a prominent ruler whose origins is shrouded by the mists of time. He was not born in nobility, but a general, a mercenary in service of the Wadiyar dynasty, who ruled the Mysore kingdom since the 14th century. Intriguingly, though the Wadiyar held the reins of power, their involvement in the unfolding events is inconspicuous to most historians and journalists, and not for lack of trying. In 1776, King Nanayara Wadiyar died at the age of 22 of totally natural causes. His mother-in-law, Rani Lakshmamani, made it known to Hyder Ali that the successor should be the nearest lawful heir. However, it was Hyder's desire that his own choice of successor should prevail. To fulfill this end, he installed a 3-year-old member of the Wadiyar family to the throne of Mysore. Ever since Hyder installed his puppet in 1776, the Wadiyar dynasty was no longer in control. Rani Lakshmamani fled to the British-ruled Madras to negotiate with the British to get her family back in the saddle. Would she succeed? Well, that was to be determined in the unfolding events. Putting aside the court intrigue, backstabbing and war crimes, the kingdom of Mysore found itself in a precarious position, encircled by adversaries, like the rival Islamic Mughal Empire to the north, the Hindu Matras, and of course, the British who controlled Madras to the east coast. But due to political maneuvering, dynastic power plays, and military victories, they conquered their competition, one by one. Nevertheless, the labyrinthine corridors of politics and military triumphs, Mysore emerged as a conqueror, keeping its competitors at bay. However, as the 19th century dawned, a new chapter unfolded. The European powers, represented by the British East India Company and the French East India Company, along with their respective allies, engaged in a series of conflicts collectively known as the Carnatic Wars, to vie for influence over Indian territories. In the annals of this historical clash, the British ultimately triumphed, cementing their supremacy over the vast Indian subcontinent. I'm going to keep this brief because trying to make sense of the alliances between the kingdoms, empires and religious groups is like attempting to separate the tumultuous brawl of irate cats over the last bit of catnip. What's important is that during the 1780s, Mysore's rivals formed alliances with the British, compelling Hyder Ali to align himself with the French. This strategy worked until the 7-Year Wars broke out in 1779. Now you might think, so what? Wars happen all the time during this era. But you have to understand that the world was changing. The European powers, once regional hegemons, were now expanding into globe-spanning empires. This transformation didn't merely involve European armies, it entangled their allies across all continents. So when war erupted, Hyder Ali had to come to the French's aid. Following the British seizure of the French port of Mahé in 1779, Hyder Ali declared war on the Anglos. In the early campaigns, with the support of French naval squadrons, Mysore achieved some initial successes, aided by his son Tipu, who commanded one of Mysore's armies, aged 17. As the protracted war unfolded, the Mysore and their allies achieved varying degrees of success, capturing cities along the way. However, in 1782, tragedy struck when Hyder Ali succumbed to cancer. Now it was up to a teenage Tipu Sultan to inherit the mantle of leadership. Despite this transition, the war continued, with both sides experiencing victories and defeats until 1784, when the Mysore agreed to a peace treaty that the British resented. Tipu's determination extended beyond the conclusion of hostilities with the British, as he turned his attention to punishing the Matras and the Nizam for their allegiance to the British. During this turbulent period, Tipu Sultan earned the moniker the Tiger of Mysore for his relentless opposition to the British and their allies. Gulam Ali was born amidst these conflicts as a member of the de facto ruling dynasty of Mysore. He enjoyed an extensive education, including tutelage from French instructors who introduced him to Western literature, warfare and science. Despite his undeniable intellect, he was a notorious daydreamer with little interest in military pursuits. A problem when you're growing up in a family whose claim to fame is based on martial prowess. But then, in the year of your Lord, 1789, something incredible happened. The late 19th century was a turbulent period during which British industry exploded while the ancient regime was hanging by a thread. Violent uprisings and brutal reprisal became the norm as the old establishment was at odds with the new. But on one day, it all stopped, if only for a brief moment. One night in 1789, the French population fell in silent awe when a mysterious bell-shaped object appeared in the night sky. Before long, this object, dubbed Elysium, captured the imagination of the global populace. This enormous object sparked both scientific and superstitious speculations about its origins. The 14-year-old Gulam Ali was no exception. Enraptured by the celestial phenomenon, he would read numerous French tales of journeys to Elysium using air balloons, peculiar flying contraptions, and even cannonballs. Writers speculated that the object was the final refuge of the Atlanteans and the survivors of Troy, and that it was home to exotic creatures and alien civilizations. And Gulam Ali wanted to see it all. Reaching adulthood, Gulam became inspired by the ideals of the Enlightenment and the French Revolution. Unlike some who cared little for the fate of the monarchs, Gulam was intrigued by the rising star in international politics, Napoleon Bonaparte. By 1800, Napoleon had risen not just to a renowned general, but an icon. This Corsican of little means, who rose through the ranks, seemed capable of turning the improbable into reality. And he did so defying the British all the while, which resonated with many Mysoreans. Despite Gulam Ali's disinterest in politics, he found himself drawn to Napoleon's adventures in Egypt and the fact he was a patron of scientific endeavors. He became convinced that Napoleon was the man who could make a journey to Elysium happen. In some ways, Tipu Sultan resembled Napoleon. Not only would he humiliate the British over the course of 3 wars, he was an innovator who introduced a new coinage system, a new calendar and land revenue system that stimulated Mysore's silk industry significantly. That brings us to the real star of the show. You see, Tipu Sultan also explored the concept of rocket artillery. Meet the Mysore rocket. These projectile weapons had the benefit of being an explosive device that could be launched at the enemy without a need for heavy cannons. Although inaccurate, when fired en masse they created chaos among the enemy lines. From a distance, British troops couldn't return fire. The British would later adopt these explosive missiles as the carriage-mounted Congreve rockets during the Napoleonic Wars. I guess you could call that irony. Originally, Gulam had little interest in what was essentially an elaborate flare. However, when he witnessed one of these rockets reach a target 2 kilometers away, he got inspired. He envisioned a rocket-propelled vehicle capable of reaching the stars. In the subsequent years, he began experimenting with larger rockets and sought ways to stabilize them. However, his efforts were met with disapproval from the court. After all, why fix what ain't broken? In an attempt to gain support, Gulam Ali promised his uncle a new siege weapon capable of striking enemy forts and arsenals from great distances with unparalleled accuracy. His uncle agreed, but Gulam Ali also had to fulfill his family obligations and marry, which he did. However, it was obvious that Mysore wasn't ready for his grand vision. His uncle kept nagging him about the design, the new weapon he was promised. So, Gulam proclaimed he would study in Paris to learn all he could and design the weapon he had promised his uncle to stamp out British dominance. And so, in 1789 he went overseas, leaving his wife and 2 children behind to be raised in the faith. He would never see them again. And with that, we conclude the first half of this 2-part video. If you can't wait to hear what happens next, go to our Kickstarter, Journey to Elysium, and back us at any tier for the conclusion to his story. And those who have supported us in the past and in the future, thank you for all you've done. Even though this is a modest channel, still it has accomplished a lot, and I hope that it will reach a bigger audience, so more can discover the joys and potential of the steampunk genre. And of course, I hope to bring this extensive multiverse to life with more authors and artists offering their input, thus creating a never-seen-before setting that allows for a lot of creativity and even more adventures. Especially in this turbulent time in media, I suspect that high-concept writing, in particular steampunk, is going to be an essential skill set for writers with the increasing prevalence of AI. But that's a topic for a different video. I hope you enjoyed these deep dives into history and the Association of Ishtar. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna bid you adieu. And as always, make things your way.